for the world to know. Patriots rising, hearts will glow. Sovereign Radio, stealing the show. Truth is blazing like the flame. Information drives the game. Soulful beats, we're breaking chains. Hear the anthem, feel the change. Feel it. For the world to know. Patriots rising, hearts will glow. In the crosshairs, feel the shame. You're in the game. Truth is blazing like the flame. Information drives the game. Soulful beat, change. We're breaking chains. Hear the anthem, feel the change. Clear the haze. Sovereign Radio. Here we go. Let's go. Broadcast loud for the world to know. Hearts will glow. Let's show. What you go. Radio. Here we go.
Good day. Thank you for joining us, friends, Americans, patriots. Lend me your ears. I've come to bury the globalist cabal, their political sycophants, and the mockingbird mainstream media, not to praise them. Welcome to Sovereign Radio. I'm your host, Scotty Sachs. Greetings to our radio audience in Texas and California. We return to radio after a brief hiatus. I can't believe it's been 5 years. It's time to renegotiate our radio agreements. We'll be back on air soon in Texas, in California. Also, great news, our official national radio syndication starts this summer. So by 2026, we anticipate Sovereign Radio will be broadcasting from the belly of the beast, mainstream media in hundreds of markets, coast to coast. Exciting times ahead, thanks to you, our loyal audience. That's for sure. I want to welcome our posse on the Grassroots Warrior Network and freedom-loving patriots in Romania, Colombia, Canada, Australia, and South Africa. Thanks for standing with us here in America. We value your support. We know you freedom-loving patriots around the world are part of the fight with us. Today on the show, Jon Dowling, a very interesting guy, is in the house. Jon is a musician turned faith-based podcaster, covering the financial reset, geopolitical, and other important issues of our time. Jon Dowling joins us to talk about the upcoming financial reset, the music industry, and more. But first, this is a big news topic, folks. Looking toward the financial reset that's clearly upon us. The Federal Reserve adopted the ISO 20022 on July 14th. That's a technical standard. The Fedwire Fund Service officially flipped the switch to ISO 20022 on July 14th. Now, think of it this way as upgrading the world's plumbing from medieval lead pipes to glowing fiber optic dragon veins. Payments will never be the same, and the Federal Reserve banking system is officially on its way to being buried. Now, payments, as I said, will never be the same because the SWIFT banking system has been replaced with a decentralized money system that will allow us to move money peer-to-peer without banks in the middle of our transactions. That's exciting, folks. I can send money to you, and there'll be no bank in between us. And yes, cash will still be king and remain in the system, the all-important element of cash. Why isn't the world on fire talking about quantum money and unicorns yet? Friends, don't confuse quiet with nothing. The old system is buckling under its own fate, and we're being handed a decentralized system with transparency and self-sovereignty like a digital sacred sword in the night. And I want to thank Nordica 42645 on X. That's NORDIQA 42645 on X for some of these very words of wisdom I just shared. Well, if you've listened to Sovereign Radio for some time now, I had my years working in the music industry, indicating radio and TV shows for artists like Johnny Cash and James Brown. So, our guest today, Jon Dowling, and I will have a lot to talk about regarding the satanic music industry, as he is an accomplished musician that worked with major recording artists. Bruce Hornsby comes to mind. Now he's a podcaster talking a lot about the financial reset. So stick around. Jon Dowling will join us in a few minutes as Sovereign Radio rolls on after a few words from our sponsors. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you about our great sponsors that make Sovereign Radio possible. Your body is a miracle machine, and Nanosoma Spray is a catalyst for the body to heal itself of any condition. I used it to get rid of a decade-long problem with neuropathy and high blood pressure back in 2024. Now you can get your health back too with Nanosoma Spray. They're all over body gel that delivers immediate pain relief. I've used it on cuts and burns, even on a toothache. They also have a facial cream that got rid of the lines in my forehead. You don't see them anymore. You can go to iwantmyhealthback.com/SR. Ladies and gentlemen, Nanosoma Spray has helped me get rid of my neuropathy. Friends I know that are thriving with MS, autoimmune diseases, even folks with cancer have used Nanosoma Spray to get their health back. So I want you to go to iwantmyhealthback.com/SR. That's iwantmyhealthback.com/SR. Now, we all need protection from the harmful effects of 5G and EMF, electromagnetic frequencies. These come from our 5G towers, our cell phones, Wi-Fi, really all of our electronic devices. Now, Body Align is one of our great sponsors that can eliminate the harmful effects of 5G, and you can get one of their great discs for your phone or protect your body with one of their very effective bracelets that create healthy, life-preserving energy and focus throughout the day. Body Align also has wellness patches for sleep, pain, and detoxification. In fact, Brother Brad Wozni from the Sovereign Soul, right here on Sovereign Radio. Brad has his own channel. Brad says that the sleep patches are giving him the best night of sleep he's had in years. Both the phone discs and the bracelets pack a 1-2 punch against EMF, electromagnetic frequencies. Go to bodyalign.com/SR. That's bodyalign.com/SR. Don't forget their wellness patches for sleep, pain, and detoxification. Ladies and gentlemen, when you support our sponsors, you support Sovereign Radio. So thank you for supporting our sponsors. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're very blessed, as always, to have a great guest coming on today. I want to bring in our first guest. His name is Mr. Jon Dowling. He's waiting in the back room. We'll get John in here. John, welcome to Sovereign Radio. Good to have you.
Good to be here, Scotty. Thanks for having me. How are you doing, brother?
I'm doing very well. I had your fine silver coin up there for the entire opening. People are looking at that thing. I know they're asking themselves, what is this coin? What is this 0.999 fine silver? So just address that first. How did you come up with, what's the significance into that little, I love that little blurb. Jon Dowling is 0.9999 fine silver.
Well, first of all, it's good to be here, Scotty. Always, brother. It was nice to have you on my podcast last week, so it's nice to have it go in reverse. The significance of the coin was basically the team thought that we had, as you know, in previous years, we thought the reset was going to happen a little bit sooner. So we thought to commemorate the season, we wanted to come up with a coin because we, as you do, we're advocates of getting precious metals, God's money. So we wanted to come up with a custom coin that we could do to commemorate the season. Ideally, the approach was to be able to give this coin away as a gift, a humanitarian project, invest in yourself, etc., commemorate this historic event. I thought down the line when I got married and had kids, this would be part of my legacy. So when they asked me what I did during this time, it would be something that I could point to as a point of historical fact and context. So that's kind of was the impetus for the coin. and it's done well. I think it's served a lot of people, and it is commemorated occasion, and it's just good for people to have silver in general.
My mind's always turning on business ideas. You ought to recreate that for other people with their own name. I bet you'd sell a bunch of those if you put others' names on it. So, hey, if Trump can create a coin, why not Jon Dowling create a coin for people, right? So, Jon, I want to start with your people don't know you on the show. You're new to Sovereign Radio. Of course, you're also one of our new content creators on our Sovereign Radio Online. I want them to get to know you beyond the podcast world, beyond what we're going to talk about today. I want you to go back. Where'd you grow up? How did you grow up? Were you raised by two parents? I suspect you had a mom and a dad at home knowing you, and we've never discussed this, but tell us a little bit about your childhood, because that reveals a lot about a person.
Sure. Well, I mean, I grew up in a small town called West Springfield, Massachusetts. So small, in fact, that, excuse me, unless people knew the area, they wouldn't know the town. It's most known for the general area is known for the Basketball Hall of Fame in Springfield. That's one of the biggest landmarks. But the town has grown over the years, and it hosts an event called the Big E, which is the Eastern States Exposition. It's basically a New England 6-state fair, and every state's duly represented in the center of town, and it's a fair and carnival and shows and rides and historical context and the offerings of each respective state, whether it be, historical landmarks, agriculture, what have you. I'm an only child. I do have parents, thank God, still alive and well. So I was raised by a loving Irish Italian Catholic family. Had a very knit group of friends in my little community. Everybody kind of knew each other. It was big enough to have space as a town, but small enough to be personal. And it was the kind of town that you probably knew and grew up yourself, where, again, you had a staple of friends and so forth. I was very blessed to have a very good education I have an interesting background because I have half my rearing and schooling is public, and then the other half is private. So I have a nice, counterbalance between the two worlds. After high school, I went to a Catholic high school. The graduating class was 16 people, so intimacy was the order of the day. Where you get to know the teachers, you get to know your peers, you get sort of almost a one-on-one core concentration of learning for retention's sake. Excellent teachers and historical knowledge of their respective subjects, and I went off to college, Berkeley College of Music. I got my bachelor's in performance and then master's in music business management. So the idea was I wanted to make a good living at my passion, because I've always been an arbiter and a believer like you, Scotty, that if you chase the passion, the finances will follow. Because if people believe in you and what you're doing from a heart perspective, they'll buy in because they see the sincerity of, the effort. But in a nutshell, that's kind of how I grew up. I was, played basketball and, baseball like every other kid. And I started taking music when I was about 6 or 7, and I just caught the bug. And what I noticed, Scotty, was much like a metaphor for life. The further you go down the rabbit hole, the less people kind of can follow you. And the ones that do, it gets deeper and deeper. So when I was taking music lessons at 7, like Music Appreciation Day, we all remember those days. Everybody wanted to take drums because that was the cool instrument and it got attention and respect. I did it because I loved it and I enjoyed it. And within the first month, all the other students dropped off, and I ended up having sort of de facto private lessons. And so then I would take lessons through school, the music school. I had a private teacher on the side because my parents really wanted to invest in that. And again, each rung of the ladder I went up, I noticed less and less people were following. And that's, again, I think a metaphor for what we're doing. Like what we're doing this podcast, Scotty, we're in a specialized, arena, and there's probably only 1% maybe of society who really grasps the totality of what's going on. And we want to bring more with us, but it's a very, narrow pathway for those who really want to pursue truth and excellence at the highest order.
Trivia. My favorite jazz guitarist went to Berkeley School of Music. In fact, at 18 years old, he was teaching at Berkeley School. Do you know who I'm talking about?
I think you're talking about Pat Metheny.
Bingo. You got it. You're a good trivia player. Yeah. Pat Metheny is one of my favorite of all time. I actually saw him for the first time at a venue on Northwestern University's campus.
Uh-huh.
They had a little music venue. You could literally sit in front of the stage, and there was a balcony, but it held 200 people. And I saw Pat Metheny and Lyle Mays, his crazy piano player, Lyle Mays and Pat Metheny, with only 200 people. Wild to sit there and watch the talent. What a talented guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting story for you on that. Pat came when I was there in the late 90s and did a couple of clinics because, as you said, he used to teach there and he was a student. His piano tuner and soundboard guy was a guy by the name of the late, great Tom Sheehan. Was Lyle Mays' piano tuner, along with Chick Corea and Bruce Hornsby, another one of my big favorites, another Berkeley guy, and University of Miami. So when I got to New York after college, Pat Sheehan was the Berkeley representative. So every city has a representative when they move there, an ambassador, if you will. And Tom took me under his wing, taught me a lot about life, about music, and would bring me to gigs with Pat when he was playing in New York. That's how I got to know him. And then, interestingly enough, a guy that I went to college with at Berkeley, Antonio Sanchez, is actually Pat's current drummer. So there's all these 6 degrees of separation. You know, Bruce and Pat have worked together for, as you know, many, many decades. So it's funny how things kind of like you and I, the way we met, we knew certain people, and then it just brought us to the middle to where we are today.
I mean, put Pat Metheny and Bruce Hornsby together. What are you going to get but this amazing sound, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're so incredible. I was going to ask you the highlight in your music career. I suspect knowing Pat Metheny has to be one of those highlights. Tell us a little bit about the music career, because you've only been podcasting 2 years. Prior to that, you're a musician. So tell us about the highlights of your music career.
Yeah, I mean, so I've been blessed to have several. I'm just doing this extemporaneously off the top of my head. So when I was at Berkeley, I was very blessed. I was, a fairly in-call session guy for a guy who was a student. I put myself out there, and it was the right place, right time kind of thing. God was overseeing it. And I was getting a lot of different type of gigs. I remember at 21, I was playing in a wedding band back home called Breezin' while I was still in school, an old George Benson song. And this was a band that was a bunch of 40 and 50-year-old guys who, played 250, 300 shows a year, including, private parties and bar mitzvahs and, cancer benefits and weddings and such. And so, I was in this on-demand group while I was in school. So I was actually getting, professionally paid to do this while I was still in my collegiate, career. After that, I moved to New York. I was able to work with guys like Michelle Camilo, who's a fabulous piano player. My first record done here in LA in 2002, individual record, I got a chance to play with some of the members of Toto. The late, great Mike Piccaro was a fabulous guy. Steve Lukather, David Page, those guys. And they took me under their wing to kind of get me in the sort of infancy stages of my individual writing career. Got to know and play with Bruce Hornsby for a number of years, and we have a number of contacts. His bass player Giovanni Collier's here in Hollywood, and we've worked together several times. Let's see, I did a number of little jingles and commercials for Ford dealerships and things like that. So just a lot of different things off the top of my head. But I've had the opportunity to become good friends and work with John DeGrazio, who's a good friend of mine. He's a very well-known producer. He's one of the founding members of Burlapped Cashmere. They had a song called "Is Anybody Out There" that did extremely well. He works for the major labels. I almost got signed to Virgin Records in 2007, so I know Michael Howe. Michael Howe was the A&R guy for Virgin at the time, then went on summarily to go to Warner Brothers. He was Collective Soul. He was one of the founding members of that group. He's now working with Paul McCartney and Neil Young at the back end of their career, managing them. So I've been very blessed to kind of intersect and rub shoulders with a lot of people in the business.
Well, maybe it was a blessing you didn't sign with Virgin Records, because now what we know about Virgin and the owner, we'll leave his name out. Everybody knows who we're talking about. He has obviously been to the dark side, that man, and we'll leave it at that. So probably a blessing, but yeah, very successful. Listening to who you gigged with and who you know and played with, I would have to call that a very successful career. Anyone who's played with Matheny and Hornsby, hats off to you, brother. You know, we're showing our age difference because I did work in a different arena with the music industry. I took artists that their careers were waning, like Johnny Cash, like James Brown, like Kenny Rogers, and gave them new life and syndicated radio or TV shows for them, and traveled with them. And so we're coming from two different eras. By the time Johnny Cash was, in the twilight of his career, Pat Metheny wasn't even born, I don't think, yet. So you and I work with two very different generations of music, big names in music.
Sure.
We'd probably talk for hours about what we took away from the music industry. My biggest takeaway, and then I'm going to ask you yours, of course, has to be what Johnny Cash and his wife explained to me in 1989, that the industry, the music business, the record business, the media was run by, as they said, quote, Luciferian cult that worshiped Satan. What's your biggest takeaway from working in the music business?
Well, I mean, regardless of generational divides, as you said, it's the same. That the entertainment industry, John Rich has talked about it, 90+% of it to this point has been run by the cabal Luciferian organizations, as you said, right up the line, Illuminati. You mentioned, Virgin, and it was definitely a blessing in disguise. I didn't get signed by them just because after that fell through, their music division got sold off into the airline portion, which was what their ultimate, deep intent was to do, was just to, create a revenue stream to get into that world. So if I did get signed, I wouldn't even hit the cutting room floor. I would have never seen the light of day, and I would have been their property for 7 or 8 years. So you're absolutely right. It was a blessing on a number of fronts. But the same takeaway as you, that's, why I sort of retreated into the angel investor world, because a label is basically a bank, so an angel investor is too, but they tend to have money. So they want to take a, chance, live vicariously through the artist, have a flight of fancy, because they're not able to do it, but they can affix themselves to someone who is or can, and they can live through that avenue. So you tend to want to find someone who can believe in you. And so I started going that route in 01, 02 to try to get funding as opposed to a label. And, I came very close a couple of times with a couple investors, but I think we're in an interesting tipping point, Scotty, with the world, both financially and as it relates to verticals like the music industry, because I think we're seeing a cleansing and a bloodletting of that deep state, and their tentacles will come off of things like the music industry, so that artists like myself and others will have a fighting chance of getting their product, their quality, their soul out to an audience that desperately wants and needs it, without all the filtering and the nefarious influence.
Yeah. And with a decentralized system, I think money will flow a lot more freely, and you'll have many more angel investors moving forward. Let's switch gears, because I do want to talk about the reset, because you have been talking about it for 2 years on your show. In my opening, I talked about July 14th, the FedWire Fund Service officially flipped the switch to ISO 20022. I found this great quote from a woman on X. She said, think of it as upgrading the world's plumbing from medieval lead pipes to glowing fiber optic dragon veins, money moving at the light of speed. Now, we know that payments are never going to be the same, and the Federal Reserve banking system is crashing under its own flaws and its own weight. The SWIFT banking system has now been replaced with a decentralized system that will allow us to move money without banks in the middle of our transactions. And as you and I have discussed, cash will still be king and remain in the system. What do you want to say? You've really done the deep dive on the changing financial system. What does it mean to our audience that's listening? Some who have followed the show for years and understand the financial reset in depth. Some who are new that don't really understand it at all. What do you say to our listeners, what is the new, forgetting the technology, the ISO 2022, the plumbing being upgraded, what does it mean to the average person, this new financial system? How does it change their life?
Well, I mean, it's a very loaded question, so I'll try to be as succinct as I can. It ultimately means it means an attitudinal and a mindset shift, going from lack to abundance, going from two people working to support a family. Ideally, if you have a nuclear home, that's what you're opting for. It means that to going back to one person having the income, namely the man, and being able to support his family. It means being able to monetize your passions instead of doing an obligatory job that you don't really want to do to pay bills you shouldn't have to be paying. In terms of, you're talking about, and this is a very fluid conversation. You're talking about, free energies that are coming out, suppressed technologies, all that. I sent you a text earlier with a gentleman that I've interviewed several times from New Fire Energy, Steve, the owner of that. We'll be able to harness nuclear energies without the radioactive elements. People are going to be getting Nasara Jasara, which is all the money's back to them that we've paid into a system that we never should have paid. It means going back to basics, a constitutional sound money system based on precious metals, God's money, Haggai 2:8. It means communities of people working together instead of this disparate, I've got mine and I'm going to take care of my side of the street and I don't care about you type of laissez-faire approach, and more of a interactive community where we're going to start to work together and need each other again. It means real money. It doesn't just mean blips on a screen. It means utilizing technology in a way that's going to be more beneficial to the people than working against them. It's going to be a completely transparent system. So money laundering, mob style tactics, pedophilia, trafficking, all that stuff's going to get squashed because it won't be able to hide under the cover of night. So there's tons of implications, but those are just a few simple examples.
Yeah, well said. Some people have heard the terms Nasara Jasara. I think it's often misunderstood. Somebody asked me yesterday, I was talking with them on the phone. They said, Scotty, do you think Nasara and Jasara is real? I said, look, there's over 100 elements to Nasara alone. There's 100 things that make it up. Is it going to happen this year? No. It'll take 3, 4, 5 years for all of these things to happen. You can call it whatever you want. Call it a blessing. Call it. Nasara stands for National Economic. What does Nasara stand for? Remind me.
National Economic Security and Recovery Act. It was a movement started in. Go ahead.
No. It's a real thing. Mm-hmm. It is a written real thing.
Right.
It's on paper, and I've seen somebody actually did a podcast where they outlined the top 90 things it means to you, Nasara, and they went through these 90 things like getting your interest payments on your mortgage back, things like not paying federal taxes anymore, right? Many things that make us shift. As you said, it is a mindset from this idea that we're living, in a minimal world, a scarcity. You got to have a mind shift from scarcity to abundance, because it's hard for people to believe Nasara when you explain it to them. But the underpinning of this new financial system allows for it, doesn't it? Doesn't the system inherently allow for these things to happen?
It does. And I don't say this by any means out of respect to contradict you or anything like that, just to make one little friendly correction.
Please
actually,
do.
Nasara has actually been taking effect since 2019. You'll note in Canada, Chase Bank defaulted on a lot of their mortgages and debts. So people were already experiencing elements of Nasara going back then. I've seen military contacts that I can't mention send me up during COVID, August of 2020. Somebody got a payment from Wells Fargo. I can't mention the amount or anything, but it said in the memo in capital letters, NESAR, and then had an X at where the A should be. So it has been going into effect. I think more and more people will see it come September, because that's when we think the flash crash, which for those who don't know that term, that means a 50% correction minimum. It's going to happen in September. What if they do it, Scotty, September 17 years to the day they did the last one when they did a bailout. History tends, as you know, to repeat itself summarily. So that in and of itself, when these banks are, you have to be Basel III compliant. And the very simple way to understand that, folks, is Basel III is a Swiss measurement of transparency. So banks have to have enough gold and silver in their balance sheets and in their vaults if you should go in and want to cash a check like your parents used to do, and you want to get a certain percentage in gold and silver, they have to be able to do that. If they don't have the liquidity to do it, they're out. So that's why you're going to see a lot of banks fold. When those banks fold, when a business goes out of business, it doesn't try to go back and collect monies, it just defaults. So what we're going to see in this reset, Scotty, ultimately going back to your previous question, is a resetting, a default of the old debt. President Trump knows he's not going to revalue gold and silver to its true rate, because that would be, you'd be looking at 150 to 200,000 an ounce. It would put it out of reach for most people. So the best thing to do is just default the debt, put it back in a gold standard. It automatically resets it. Most people don't know we don't really have 37 trillion in debt. The consumer portion is about 10 billion actually. So it'd be very easy for him to do that. The rest is on the deep state. You just stick it on them. That's what he's doing with Powell right now. He's sticking it on the bad guys. So they're going to take the heat for when this thing resets. Everybody's going to look at them and not Trump. That's kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, the Federal Reserve is getting a quite an examination. I forgot what it's called when they go up your butt, and what is that kind of exam called?
Colonoscopy?
Yeah, they're getting a colonoscopy, the Federal Reserve right now. You know, I heard President Trump joke the other day, and he said it jokingly, but he was darn serious. He said, what if we use precious metals and crypto to pay off our 37 trillion in debt?
Right.
And he laughed like this, like, ah, ha, ha. But this is really what's happening, isn't it?
Yep. Well, it is. And if you look on my Telegram that you're on, you can see he had an article just the other day. We had a phone call with Fox. What if we eliminate the IRS? We already did. Yeah. In 2020, as we talked about last week on my podcast, for your respective audience, during COVID, he baked the Fed into the Treasury. So what he's doing now is he's getting the public to buy in to the notion of removing the Fed, because no one really wants to pay interest rates or taxes or any of this stuff. They just didn't know. They never had a choice, but you do. And so what we're excited about on our end is that you see Scott Bessent, the current Treasury Secretary, talking about a new candidate to replace Powell. We think it's going to be Judy Shelton, who's a gold expert. She's highly educated, knows precious metals well. Trump trotted her out in his first term to do a litmus test under a deep swamp in his first term, and she nearly got 50% approval at that point. He loves to hire women in executive positions. He did it all throughout his real estate mogul tycoon days in the 80s, you know, vis-a-vis the art of the deal. So he has a historical presence doing this. This would be a legacy for her to leave on her very well tenured resume. And, you know, she could just run into the Fed, which is already through the baked into the Treasury, as I mentioned earlier. Bessent could either stay in this role or he could move into some other capacity. And boops, they just audit the Fort Knox. Q says we have the gold, audit the Fed, boom, get rid of it. They already did. And you go back to a gold-backed standard. Wouldn't it be interesting, Scotty, if they do this almost 54 years to the date of when Nixon and Kissinger took us off? I believe it was before my time, but what I researched was, I think it was August 18th, if I remember, of 71 was when this happened. And as far as Nassar goes, there are biblical precepts. Leviticus 25, 9 to 12 speaks of a debt jubilee in the Jewish calendar every 50 years. What's the coincidence of that, Scotty? Central banks usually only last 50 years before they have to be replaced. We're way overdue for this reset.
Yeah, the central banking system in the Act 1913 Act was not only intended to be 50 to 60 years. We're well past that.
Right.
And you know, I've tried to explain to people, before we take care of our other problems of the world, we've got to take down the Federal Reserve first. We've got to get the money system changed over, because he who has the gold makes the rules. Mm-hmm. And some of the rules they created for the world are that which we know as very evil and satanic: human trafficking, pedophilia. Do you agree with me? We're going to quickly, and I quietly know, and you probably know some military guys who will tell us that tonight there will be men out saving children. In the dark of night, there are men, military guys out every night now around the world in 30-country alliance saving the kids. that is going to be, to me, the greatest falling out as a result of the Fed, the bloodlines losing control of the world. We're going to see the not a complete elimination. You may not ever completely eliminate pedophilia, but the supply chain of it, the trafficking of children. Do you agree that's going to go down? As you said in the open earlier, they won't be able to bring their money into the new system from trafficking, right?
Well, there's no question about it. I mean, it's a very understood notion that the military has been, as you know, with med beds, saving kids, military guys, PTSD. They've been at this for many, many years. Here in California, we've had scant earthquakes over the last couple of years. But what I had to research is that those are actually DUMS units being blown up, deep underground military bases, where they're doing rescue missions. So that's a constant process of saving these children. In fact, I just had a interesting, you should bring this up, Scotty. I had an interesting podcast with a regular on our channel, SG and On, who's also now a Sovereign member. Kudos to him. I was talking to him the other day about that. And the flood that just happened in Texas a couple weeks ago with those poor kids in that Christian camp in Kirk County in Texas, he informed me that there was actually on the cover of Night, while the fake news is putting out one narrative, they were actually using that as an opportunity to rescue said kids out of tragedy. So that was an encouragement to me that I did not know it was even going on, as per your example. So it is definitely a fluid and ongoing process. And it is one of the things I think that President Trump wants on his many storied hallmark legacy during this period of time he's going to be president or commander-in-chief of the Republic, is to rescue those kids. And because here's the thing, Scott, whether you're Republican, Democrat, black, white, young, old, this, that, the typical extremes that the cabal wants us in, everybody hates children being compromised. Prisoners don't even like it. You know, you go in the prison system, right? It's common knowledge that they have a code of conduct inside the prison. If you hurt kids, you're in a lot of trouble. So that's sort of a universal axiom, I think. And so as a result, it is definitely something that is of the highest priority to at least, I think they're going to try to, if they don't eliminate 100%, it'll be 95, 90%, 97% reduced and eliminated.
You know, to me, it's the one thing that will truly unite humanity. I don't care if you're left, right, center, Republican, Democrat, red state, blue state, conservative, liberal. Anybody of sound mind is against human trafficking, particularly of children.
Right.
And this is so important, and I discuss it as often as I can because I think this is uniting the world. If the world understands part of what Trump is doing in resetting things is taking away their ability to have a human trafficking business, the infrastructure, the resources, and all of the movement of kids, all the money, the human resources it takes to create the distribution, the supply side. It's all going to be gone, isn't it? That's the beauty of this.
Absolutely. I mean, you can't have a new, whatever you want to call it, quantum financial system. I call it a QPS, quantum people system. Going back to it's like going back to the future, as my team member John G says. It's the perfect amalgam or symmetry of, you know, the standard of God's money, precious metals, with technology interspersed. And what that entails is a level of, you know, we need real food, real money, real body parts, real conversations, real everything, real relationships across the board. Again, interspersed with technology in a way that benefits the people instead of hamstrings them. And one of the benefits of this new system is it's going to blow out of the water all of this nefarious activity because you won't be able to hide. It's all out in the open, right? So the theory is if you're not doing anything wrong, you shouldn't really be concerned. But that being said, I don't want to leave this out because it's important. I don't want to overlook the key thing. The whole point of this godly wealth transfer, or the second iteration, right? Because Bitcoin already started and other stocks have moved. We're now moving to the foreign currency, cryptos, as you mentioned, precious metals, real estate, land. All of that is in a very concerted effort to become your own central bank. So one of the things we encourage on our channel is for people to change their mindset, take action, and so are you prosper. right? And that's not just in the confines of your church. We are the church, the ecclesia, wherever we go. Minister to somebody at the grocery store, a homeless person, your neighbor. It really doesn't matter. It's a fluid, ongoing thing. It's constant. But becoming your own central bank is critical because you don't want to be tethered to their system. You want to use it as a springboard to get off and have your own independence, grow your own food, have your own source of energy, have a water source, those sort of things. And it frees up people to be independent. And because those who have the money control and effectuate the decisions, it's been in the wrong hands for so long. It's now time to level the playing field to get it more into the hands of the right people.
Level the playing field. That's the key to the whole reset, not just in the United States, but level the playing field for every country, every sovereign nation of the world. So I want to change the subject. Ladies and gentlemen, I do not discuss with my guests before they come on what we're going to talk about. I have people on that are sharp enough to think on their feet. And on occasion, I've had a few guests send me questions in advance they wanted me to ask them. But Jon doesn't know where I'm going next. So I'm hitting him cold with this stuff. And that's how I like to do kind of freestyle work that I do here. I want to talk about something that has been ongoing for a few weeks on my show, and that is multiculturalism versus multi-ethnic America. I am a big believer that we want to remain America a multi-ethnic society. We love immigrants, legal immigrants. We love the Irish came here. You're an Irish Catholic. We love that the Mexicans have come to our country. We love that my grandfather came here from Poland. But these were people and ethnicities that came here to adopt and respect American culture. What we have now with open borders is the opposite. We have people coming here for debit cards, new Nikes, backpacks, meal tickets, and housing. And in fact, we won't even get into the Islamic Sharia law thing that's taking place in some cities. Yeah, there are two cities in America, ladies and gentlemen, Paterson, New Jersey, and Dearborn, Michigan, that are very close to becoming, no exaggeration, Sharia law cities. There's enough weight of the movement, the Islamic Sharia law movement in those cities for that to happen. Here's my big thing about the problem of multiculturalism in America. That means if we believe a multicultural America is good, then they can bring child brides culture, the culture of child brides to America, and we should accept that. I don't think so. We don't want men walking down the aisle with 8 and 9-year-old girls like they do in parts of the world. If we're to accept multiculturalism, we're to accept a man from Haiti grabbing a cat off the street and eating it. It's okay in his culture to do that. So I'm ranting now to everybody that I feel is plugged in and understands what I'm talking about here, that multiculturalism, when Michael Savage, a great syndicated radio guy, said, what makes a nation is borders, language, and culture. If we don't have a common culture and we have multiculturalism, this is a long build up to my question. Do you believe we lose America with multiculturalism?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's what you said. We're a nation of constitutional laws, borders, language unifies people. In a lot of other countries, they have a unified language, and you could go down the line what that looks like. What you're really talking about, Scotty, is assimilation. When my great-grandparents came over from the boat in Naples, in the house they spoke Italian, but they made concerted efforts to speak English in public. They understood that they were embracing America and all that it affords them, right, the land of opportunity. And there was a respect and a reverence for the land and the rules and the societal constructs. We need to get that back. This is an interesting conversation because this kind of dovetails back to what we were talking about with Nasara Jasara, because one of the rules of Nasara Jasara is that you have to, in order to get the monies back to you as a citizen of your own country, you have to go back to your country. That's what you're seeing with ICE. Everybody thinks it's about hatred of minorities or this or that. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with laws and orders and restoration of people back to their land. That's why President Trump is offering free one-way trips back, because part of the rules in the SAR is that you have to be in your home country. So he's defunding the banker wars throughout the world, part of leveling the playing field, part of BRICS, helping get assets in the ground, like the trade deal he just did with Vietnam for the dong and Indonesia for the rupiah, and getting access to copper as a backstop when silver runs out. It's a separate subject, but it correlates, is helping these countries not only level the playing field financially, but sovereign mentally, if that's a word. So their sovereignty is going to be restored, sovereign radio. And so you're helping people. They don't want to necessarily be here, and we don't really want them here. So they don't need to be. They came here to get a better life because they couldn't get in their country. But if they could go back to their home and have a better life and be with their family, which is completely illogical, right? Like, take me, for instance, when this reset happens optically, I'm going to Tennessee because that's been something God's put on my heart for a long time. My mom will be with me. It's a restoration of Leviticus 25, 9-12 again from the Bible. It not only includes finances and a jubilee and a forgiveness of debts, but it's restoration of people to their land and their clan, going back to basics. So multicultural, look, none of us have a choice what skin we're born in, how tall we are, what our facial structures look like. I mean, that's DNA and genetics, but we can't come out of the womb and say, no, I want to, do this and this. We're born how we are. Nobody has control of the shell that we're in, right? So this whole, Black pride and Irish pride, those are all agendas of division by the cabal. Back to our original conversation. Be someone who's attracted to people of good quality and character, right? The heart is what matters. Be attracted to quality people, regardless of the outer shell. But selling to an agenda of multiculturalism just for the sake of it, you start to lose your sovereignty and identity as a nation. Look what's going on in England right now, right? They have such a Muslim influx. The British are losing all of their traditions that they hold dear. They're being watered down to the point of unrecognizability. If we, as America goes, the rest of the world goes. So we have to lay a foundation of discipline that will ultimately not only help us, but the rest of the world as well.
I was talking to some Dutch women in Aruba a couple years ago. Aruba's a Dutch island. The Dutch frequently vacation in Aruba.
Right.
And they were telling me that in their, I don't remember the city they lived in, but in their city, they couldn't go out at night alone because Muslim men, and I'm not picking on the Muslims, this speaks to cultural values and multiculturalism. The Muslim men culturally believe if you're a woman out alone at night, you're asking to be sexually molested, that you're inviting it simply because you're alone. You want to go to the market, pick up a few groceries. You don't do it alone in their city anymore at night. You have to do it with a man. Women out at night is not acceptable in their culture anymore because it invites this culture that came from the Middle East to sexually molest them. This is what I have to say about child brides, eating cats, and raping women in the street. If this is your thing, go do it in your homeland. Go do it. Be with your tribe in your homeland and go do it. Don't bring it to America. Fair enough?
Well, obviously, yeah. I mean, don't force that goes back to assimilation. You need to assimilate to us if you're going to be here, not the other way around. We're not here to cater to you. And if you don't like it, go back where you came from. Again, Nasara Jasara. Make your country great again so you don't have to impinge on us, which again was part of the cabal's agenda. They hate America. They hate God. We are a Judeo-Christian society, and the deep state, Satan, wants to strip away of that. That's what, I read about, as happened in the 60s with feminism. Start putting government in place of the man, remove the man out of why do they want to remove the man? Because the man represents leadership. If they take away God through man, through the family, and they start stripping it down, and they start re-amalgamating America the way they want it to look like, which has no resemblance to what our forefathers fought and died to establish.
Yeah. Look at our government rewarded. I'm thinking of my hometown, Chicago. I met many a woman, African American particularly, who said, I am better off not having my husband in my home and having 6 kids because financially I'm better off than if I'm married to my husband with 2 children. I am better off financially without him and having more children because government's paying for each one of those things a nice stipend. It's just so we've actually crashed our own culture from within as well, right? The Federal Reserve, who created these rules, the bankers. This is
Right.
why we need to turn the tables on the money changers again. Where is it in the Bible? I'm not a scripture person. Where is it in scripture where Jesus turned the table on the money changers?
I believe that was in, and I have to go back and look at it, but I believe it's in, I want to say it's in Matthew. It's in a couple passages.
It's in a couple places, yeah.
A couple different places, yeah. But no, that's right. And I mean, and that's, first of all, Scotty, that's BS, that trope that woman was feeding you. That's the lie that Satan wanted them to believe, to feed the pride and ego. Satan is always going to copy God. That's all he can do. He can't re-originate. All he can do is try to replicate, taking words out of context. Like I hear this all the time. And I hear this in the church. A lot of Christians misinterpret this part, right? Money is the root of all evil. No, it's not. Anything that's an idol over God is the root of evil. Idolatry is the root of evil. Your husband, your wife, your job, your car, your house, your this, your that, anything that takes precedence over the Lord is the root of all evil. That's what it actually says. A lot of Christians soundbite things and they take it way out of context. But the statistics would argue, Scotty, otherwise, for as you mentioned, and for Black women in particular, because if you go back to the late Kevin Samuels, he talked about this. He said back, 80 years ago, the Black culture had an 80% marital rate, right? Families stayed together. They were nuclear. They raised kids. They didn't need college, didn't need all this stuff. Now, about 17 to 20% of Black women, 1 in 4, less than 1 in 4, will actually get married. Let me ask you a question as a man. Do you know any men who have actually wanted to date or court and marry a woman based on how much money she made or how many degrees she has?
I have never known any man like that. No, I've never known a man who married for money. I've heard of men who married into families for money,
Right?
Or how many degrees. I've heard of it, but I've not known any.
Not any real men. A lot of simps.
No,
maybe,
I don't.
real-
I've never hung out with a guy who'd said, "I'm going to find the wealthiest, most agreed woman that I can find." No, never.
I have never said to myself, "Boy, that girl's balance sheet and her degrees really get me turned on." It's never happened. We don't care about that stuff. That's what the cabal wants them to care about and become the basis of what they then want us to care about. We don't, right? Men want.
John, I want to interrupt you so I don't forget the thought. In fact,
Sure.
show me a woman the last 20 years with 6 degrees, 6 PhDs. I'm going to run the other way from that woman because she's likely so bought into the woke culture that we'll have nothing in common anyway. So go ahead. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're fine. This is good back and forth dialogue. Well, absolutely. And again, going back to statistics, you can go online anywhere you want. By 2030, there's an agenda that 50%, it doesn't matter if you're white, black, blue, whatever, 50% of modern, it's a nice word for feminism, 50% of feminist women will be single, childless, or homeless. There's going to be no place for that crap. You're going to have to choose who you serve. You're going to either be a godly, loving, submissive, cooperative, easy to work with, fit, feminine wife, or you're going to be a Jezebel sitting on the sidelines arguing with all your female friends. You were talking about the Black woman, for example, right? Again, Kevin Samuels, not me, had said this, but he's right. It's an interesting observation. Go to if you can find one anymore, an Applebee's or a Macaroni Grill on a Friday night, right? You'll see a lot of Black women with their kids and their mothers. Very rarely do you see a man there. And they think in their foolish thinking that they're better off, but they're not. It's a deception.
Of
and
course.
those kids grow up
Especially
to be just
the children.
well, that's where I was going.
Children are the big losers without a father in the home.
Absolutely. Yeah, because women were not meant to be a mom and a dad. You're out of order. trying to take on a role you were never meant to do. A man has his role, a woman likewise. They work together and they function as one with different purposes and different tasks or assignments. That's the strength, not one person trying to be everything. It's the biggest lie the enemy could get people to believe, that they could do it without God.
You know, the mother of my daughter, she and I knew by the time our daughter was 6 that we really shouldn't be living together. We loved each other. We were best friends, but we knew that this wasn't going to be a forever marriage. But we stayed together 7 more years. I lived with her mother 7 more years beyond the time our hearts were telling us stick together for our daughter. Our minds were telling us something different. We stuck together for our daughter until she was 13 or 14. And I know that child is much better off because I stayed at home. She had a family. She came home from school to a mother and a father every night, had dinner with us. And that kind of kid stands a lot better chance than the family you described sitting around Applebee's on Friday night without a father. So very, very important point you make. It's a deception. It's good versus evil and God versus Satan. Everything is in the world today, hence the next subject. Everybody I talk to, whether they understand the spiritual war or not, feels the energy shifting in this world.
Yeah.
In your words, what is this energy shifting all about? And I know, I think I know some of your answer, but I'm curious how you'll answer. Tell my audience why they're feeling different and they feel a different energy in the world today.
Well, I'm laughing because this has been the bane of the subject with a lot of my friends and team that I work with alike. We've been opining about this for quite a time, but especially the last
Exactly. Everybody's talking about the energy shifting.
Yeah, I've noticed it really pronounced in the last 2 weeks. I think what it comes down to, you could use the Schumann resonance from a frequency shift that we're doing, a timeline shift, because things are merging as the systems financially are shifting. It's not relegated to just that. It's also energies, societal norms. Everything is shifting. So you're seeing this parallel cross. But I think it has to do with from a faith standpoint, which is where I tend to go, it's the wheat from the tares. It's good and evil separating. People are showing their true colors now of who they've always been. They can't hide behind the veil of status and money and imagery and things of that nature, which you know all too well from major cities. People are scared, and anger comes as a derivative from fear. People know something's coming, but they don't know what and how because they're not anchored. Not everybody, but a lot of people are not anchored in Christ. So when you're not anchored in Christ, you're anchored on sinking sand, right? Things that will not last. But ultimately, it's wheat from the tares separating themselves.
Very, very true. I think you said the last 2 weeks you feel it. For me, it's kind of been building over the last couple of years, and I agree. The last month in particular, and it's most people, it's a curious thing. They're not plugged in to the spiritual war. They don't think about it. And we understand that's why we do what we do. We're trying to get more people to understand these concepts of a spiritual war, that there is good versus evil and God versus Satan, that the Bible really meant something, that there are clues all around us that this energy shift has to do with the spiritual war and good versus evil. And as we shift toward a godly world and a better world, I had somebody the other day, I don't remember who it was, they're on mainstream media. Maybe it was Judge Janine, maybe, I think it was. Somebody in mainstream media that's conservative said, had Trump been assassinated in Butler, Pennsylvania, the world would be a very different place today. Now, we usually say nobody's irreplaceable. In a business, you say no one man is ever irreplaceable. And I generally agree with that. But there is something to the notion that only President Trump could do what's getting done. I don't think there's a replacement for him in terms of what he's getting done. Do you agree?
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I was coughing. Yes, I do. He's actually been used, Scotty, as King Cyrus. So if you study the history of King Cyrus, he was not a Christian. He was not one of God's at the time. But God doesn't need perfect people to do his perfect will. He proved that with Moses and David and Solomon, and goes on down the line throughout biblical history. But King Cyrus is mostly known for being tasked with two things. One, restoring Israel and bringing prosperity to the nations. We saw what he did in his first term, going over to Israel, establishing Jerusalem as the capital for the U.S., restoring the Abrahamic Accords. We see what he's doing now with the BRICS, or the currencies, with, as I said, Indonesia, China, Vietnam, Iraq, Zimbabwe, South Africa as a continent. You go down the line with all these countries and provinces, all whatever it is, 207, 209, by you add up all the different individual islands. He's restoring prosperity across the nation, so the globe. So that is very much part and parcel of what King Cyrus's task was. I don't think there is anybody else that could do it. And he's going to get another term. Part of Nasara's fraud vitiates everything, right? So he's going to get that back.
Yeah, he's joked about a third term many, many times.
He's putting up breadcrumbs to get the public used to the idea.
He's a master at it. He does it jokingly. He does it in passing. The other day, they brought up Epstein in the in a press conference. Like, are we still talking about Epstein? Like, as if it doesn't mean anything. The truth about Epstein is he's a middleman. He's a soldier. There's guys, but they're really after the guys who funded Epstein, right? The men above him, the men who controlled the Epstein network, the Diddy network. Epstein and Diddy didn't control these networks. There were men controlling them, and that's what Trump really meant by, we still talk about Epstein? No, because you know what? Bondi and Cash are on to the bigger fish.
Well,
right?
But then,
they're on to the bigger fish.
Yeah, but then he came back and recapitulated yesterday and said, "Why don't let Pam Bondi look more into this?" He's definitely not done with this. The Supreme Court is meeting off book.
Oh, of course not.
But there's still, the Brunson case is still in play. People may not know or believe that, but it's true. I've had a lawyer on my show several times. He's like, they could bring it up and I wouldn't even know about it, which is true because he's a civilian. They don't need his permission. You're seeing corruption being removed, whether people know it or not, in the Supreme Court. This stuff is happening in cloak and dagger in the back rooms, right? Like Wizard of Oz, pay no attention, man behind the curtain. But it's all going to come front and center. But they have to do it in a way, Scotty, that's a frog in the pot. If they do it too quickly, people will freak out. They have to do it slowly and gradually. The problem is, or the challenge lies, is that people in our world, in the awakened patriot movement, already know this. And we're chomping at the bit because we want to move forward. But this has to be for the greater good of society. It can't just be for the awake people because they would have too much collateral damage. So they want to do it in the least catastrophic way possible.
Yeah, what I mean by Trump joking about Epstein, I believe they're moving well. The Epstein investigation has moved well beyond Epstein, is my point.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's moving into the higher ups. Who are the money? Where did the money come from? Who controlled Puppet Epstein, right? He had puppet masters that controlled him, and that was my meaning. Well, we've got about 5 minutes left, John. I'm going to let you turn it over to you. What do you want to talk about in the last few minutes with my audience? What's on your mind?
Well, before I do that, let's just, let's touch on what you said cogently, because what Trump is doing is a reverse engineering process. Typically, in sales, you go top down. What he's going bottom up. He gets the bottom fish to go ahead and give up the bigger names, like you said, and he works it up the flagpole that way to get maximum results. Really, it's what I wanted to talk about is just people need to become their own central bank. Changing your mindset is key. Being around positive people who are going in the same direction in life that you are, that have the same positive mindset, who want to think differently and effectuate change and not just do things the same old way, I think is going to be the key to it all, because that will in and of itself engender the action part. A lot of people take action and, buy crypto or currencies or metals, but they don't change the mindset. So you're just going to have a lottery mentality if you don't do that. So I think that's the most important thing. That begets everything else. We were just talking about the cultural perception of America with multiculturalism. You were talking about Nasara Jasara. You're talking about pedophilia. All of that stuff goes back to a mindset, right? It starts here and it works its way out. If you look at biologically, there's 18 inches between the heart and the brain. But when those things work together in symmetry, it's a very, very powerful force. God made us all unique with our own supercomputer. We have to actually use the gifts and talents that he's equipped us. We can't just be like Matthew 25:15. Don't be that third guy who buried the one talent in the ground, because it didn't end well for him. The talent was stripped from him and he was burned up in a lake of fire. You don't want that. God is a loving and just God, but he's also a God of justice and righteousness. He's not going to let wrong deeds go unpunished. So, more than the money, more than the wealth transformation, more than the stuff, it's about mindset, ideology. And I think the thing that I would close with is, I always say to my audience, Scotty, do a 6-month appraisal of your life every 6 months, right? When I was taking lessons with a lot of my teachers in high school, I had one teacher who was a great clinician. His name was Larry Levine. And he would always be on me about, every 6 months, do an assessment. Where are you now versus where were you 6 months ago? Are you ahead? Are you behind? Are you treading water? Where are you? Be real with yourself. Have a self-awareness check. And so I think we need to go back, those of us who, like you and I, who've been into this movement for, over 10 years, some people multi-decades, look at the movement that you've been in and say, what was my motivation for getting in this back then? And what is it now? If you're growing and changing with a mindset, attitudinal change, you should see that the reasons that you're in it now are vastly different than what it was when you first started, because you're seeing a sea change, from season to season.
Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for losing Jon Dowling. We had a complete power outage and power blowout here on my end. So thanks to Jon, and we'll have Jon back soon on Sovereign Radio. In the meantime, you can find Jon at jondowling.com. That's jondowling.com. By the way, Jon does not have an H. So that's jondowling.com. You can also find Jon on Rumble, Jon Dowling. Now, that's all the time we have today on Sovereign Radio. Thanks to all of our friends in the USA and around the world for watching and listening to the show. You are our valuable audience. You are the MVP of the show and the reason we do this. Remember, we're on a brief hiatus from our radio shows while we renegotiate our radio station affiliate agreements. We'll be back in Texas and on KCBQ 1170 AM San Diego very soon, and we'll keep you updated on that. In the meantime, you can catch this weekly show online at sovereignradio.com. That's sovereignradio.com. Listen 24/7 to the show. Also, check out our other great shows like Dave Hodges and the Common Sense Show, the Sarah Westall Show, SG and On, Brad Wozni and the Sovereign Soul, and many, many others. Sovereign Radio is your place for uncensored and unfiltered information. Don't forget to support the show by supporting our sponsor links. That's sovereignradio.com, and the links are in the description in the video below. Until next time, stay in prayer for our nation. Go perform a random act of kindness this week and give someone you love today a big hug. You've been watching or listening to Sovereign Radio. This is Scotty Sachs, over and out.